Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I am your host. And in this episode, we are going to be recapping my Megalabowl draft that I just did. It is September 2nd, Tuesday night. I just wrapped up the Megalabowl draft through the Fantasy Footballers. We'll get into what that is, but basically, just think about this episode, this draft recap, as a sort of mock draft. It's pretty much the same thing, except this draft actually happened. And for this Megalabowl, in order to win the whole thing, you have to have a really high upside team, because by the end, you basically have to have the best team out of like thousands of people. So that did shift my draft strategy a little bit, and I learned a lot in this draft. I took some people that I don't normally take. But before we get into the draft, please make sure to drop a like if you can, like wherever you're enjoying the podcast. Make sure to follow or subscribe. And this is episode number 42, and we're going to get right into the Megalabowl recap. So, let me pull this up here. Boom. If you're on the YouTube, you're going to have video. I would highly recommend heading over to the YouTube if you're not already there. Fantasy Football Prodigy over on YouTube. That way you can see the draft board, see my screen, what I'm looking at and everything. But basically, the Megalabowl is this huge fantasy football tournament. I believe it's the biggest in the world, hence the Megalodon word to play. It's run through the Fantasy Footballers. They are probably the biggest fantasy football podcast out there. They're kind of the ones that I like to listen to the most. And they do this big tournament where it's broken up into a bunch of 12-team leagues. You pick a draft spot. You play in that league through weeks 1 through 14 of the season, just like a normal 12-team league. And then the playoffs are weeks 15 to 17. And to get into the playoffs, you must finish week 14 in the top 6 of your league, where then you will compete with everyone else who makes the playoffs. So in the end, you pretty much have to be like the best team out of all the remaining teams to make it. And if you win, I think you get like, yeah, you get a spot in their league, and you get like this like ultimate Foot Clan membership that they have, where you get all sorts of perks and stuff. So you know, the last day to enter, I believe, is tomorrow, September 3rd. So if you're listening to this, that might have already passed, but shout out to the footballers. Also, before we get into the actual draft, these are the rules. So it's a 12-team league: 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex, and a defense. No kickers. You get 5 bench spots, 2 IR spots. You can do trades. You get $100 of fab throughout the season. It's a 6-point per passing touchdown league, compared to the 4% that is kind of more the norm. It's also half PPR. You get a bonus for 40-yard passes of 2. You get a 2-point bonus for 40-yard plus passes, runs, and receptions that are touchdowns. And you get 0.1 points per rushing attempt. So that's a little bit of an extra wrinkle there, a few of those things. And then in the playoffs, the top 50% in week 15 move on, and then the top 50% in week 16 move on, and then in the championship, it's just the highest scoring team wins. So you really have to play for that upside. All right, enough yapping. Let's get into the draft here. So the first pick of the draft was Jamar Chase, then Bijan Robinson, Jamar Gibbs, Justin Jefferson, McCaffrey, Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty, Malik Neighbors, and then I was on the clock. I was really deciding between Puka Nacua and Nico Collins here with this pick, if I'm being honest. So in a normal league, I might be more tempted to go running back, or maybe someone safer at receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown. But again, in this league, you need to make sure you have upside. And even in the first round, a lot of these guys do have upside, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is certainly a fantastic player and could be a top-end wide receiver. I think Puka Nacua is one of the rare players this late in the first round that could finish number 1 overall at their position. Nico Collins also is in that boat, but I opted to go with Puka Nacua. Obviously, you know, if Matthew Stafford stays healthy and Puka himself stays healthy, that's going to go a long way in making this pick work out. But I also, you know, I don't have Puka Nacua in any other leagues, and I thought, you know what, this will be a fun chance to get him. And I did like a lot of the running backs that were on the board pretty similarly, so I went with Puka Nacua. After that, the turn on the 12, so I had the 11th pick. The next pick with the 12th pick on the turn there went Nico Collins and Amon-Ra St. Brown, so doubled up at wide receiver. And then I was forced with a tough decision here, especially in a points per carry league where you get 0.1 per carry. Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs and even Bucky Irving kind of move up the draft board a little bit. Devon Achane is also a little bit underrated at this point just with his pass catching work. But I opted to go with Chase Brown, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. Honestly, I don't know if, on paper, Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs is probably the better, safer pick, but there's two reasons that I took Chase Brown. One, I love that offense for the Bengals. I think they could be the best offense in the league in terms of points scored, and their defense is just terrible, where they're going to have to score pretty much every game to keep up with the other team. But also, I just don't have Chase Brown in any leagues. And he was one of my guys. Spoiler if you didn't check out that episode, he was my running back, my guy. And to not have him in any league, I felt like this was a good place where, he's a pass catcher, high powered offense, bad defense, and there's really no competition there in Cincinnati. He could be a steal here. So I reached on him just a little bit instead of taking a guy like Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs. But, there's some downside to Taylor and Jacobs where they're not necessarily the most involved pass catchers compared to a guy like, Chase Brown. Jonathan Taylor, that offense could, turn bad quickly. Daniel Jones is a starter, which isn't great, but they could also turn to Anthony Richardson. Neither are great options there. That offense could stall out. And Josh Jacobs is a great player. I think the Packers are going to be a good team, unfortunately. I am a Vikings fan, but I do think they'll have a good team with a good defense and be able to run the ball. But last year, he really was running in a lot of touchdowns, which he could definitely do again. But I would not be surprised at all if more of those touchdowns go to Jordan Love. Granted, the makeup of their team really is turning into like a defense, run the ball type of team with that Micah Parsons trade. But after Chase Brown, Devon Achane, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, and Jonathan Taylor go off the board. So I kind of started a little run of running backs there. Then Drake London, A.J. Brown, Brock Bowers, the first tight end off the board, goes with the 2-9. Kyron Williams, Brian Thomas, Josh Allen, first quarterback off the board. And then in the third round, we got the rookie Omarion Hampton, another Charger, Ladd McConkey, JSN, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson. And then at this point, I was kind of hoping maybe Trey McBride or George Kittle would fall to me so I could have that positional advantage that might come in big in the playoffs once you need to really differentiate your team. But McBride and Kittle go next. T. Higgins goes off the board. He's another high upside player I was kind of interested in, even though I do already have his teammate with Chase Brown. Marvin Harrison Jr., not someone I'm really big on in a standard, redraft league. But again, he is a big play guy. Disappointing rookie year, but he could have a big second year. And he was someone that I was considering, but he went. James Cook goes off the board, and then I am on the clock here. So I'm faced with a decision of who to go with. There's a handful of guys I like here, especially at running back. Kenneth Walker, Travion Henderson, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard were on the board. I could go quarterback with Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow. But wide receiver wise, Tyreek Hill is there with some upside. A handful of other receivers that I like, but I ended up going with Kenneth Walker. This is a guy who I haven't drafted in any leagues. And maybe if this was a regular league where, it's with my friends or whatever, and I'm just trying to make the playoffs and win the league, I might have gone with a safer pick like Chuba Hubbard or James Conner, where I think they're going to see a ton of volume and be a really solid, high running back 2, maybe low running back 1, depending on the pass catching and the touchdown scoring. But Kenneth Walker, despite his injury history, he is a very talented and explosive player. They want to run the ball in Seattle, and his big thing has been injuries his whole career. We just need to hope that he doesn't have a season-ending injury and that he doesn't get hurt in the playoffs. If he misses a couple games throughout the regular season, I'm okay with that. It remains to be seen what Zach Charbonnet's role is going to be as RB2 there. But again, in terms of drafting for upside, Kenneth Walker, I think, with what the Seahawks are going to want to do this year, I think he has the potential to be a real steal here at the 3-11. And I'd rather have him over, James Cook, who I know he had like 18 touchdowns last year, but I don't think that's going to happen again. And without those, I think he's going to be a little bit inconsistent. And, without those elite tight ends on the board still, I went with Kenneth Walker. Next up, Jalen Hurts at quarterback goes next. Then Travion Henderson, rookie running back for the Patriots. I was considering him, but I think Ken Walker he had the slight edge for me. And then I went with Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, as my second wide receiver. I have him in Dynasty. I think he could bounce back. I know 2 years ago he was the number one wide receiver overall. I traded for him in Dynasty, and then he really disappointed. I also already had McCaffrey, who got hurt in that league, and I still somehow won, largely because I traded a second round rookie pick, and I think it was Andre Oshibas for Derrick Henry from a rebuilding team, so that really propelled me to that championship. But I'm running it back with CMC, and I'm running it back with Tyreek Hill, and ironically I traded away Derrick Henry, even though I think Derrick Henry is probably the safest of that group, but that's a whole nother video. I think, if you're talking about upside here, Tyreek Hill is the guy to pick here, over Kamara, who's on a bad offense. He'll be used as a pass catcher, but he's getting older, bad offense. DK Metcalf, I think, is probably the safest pick at receiver here. But I don't know if I see the upside there in Pittsburgh, where, Aaron Rodgers is, he's getting older. He's not the player he once was, and I think they're going to try to run the ball and play defense there. Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, Ted McMillan, I don't mind those picks at all, but Tyreek Hill to me kind of stood out as, he's older. He wasn't used the way we wanted to last year, but if for whatever reason things turn around, I know it's rare for a player to turn it around at his age after, the 30 plus age mark, but if the Dolphins air it out a little bit more than they did last year, which they really didn't at all last year. Jonnu Smith is gone, and Tyreek Hill did have that wrist injury. I don't know how much that played into his poor season, but he has enough upside in the fourth round where I was really willing to take a shot here, where upside kind of is the name of the game. And I did mention Christian McCaffrey. I had the 111, so I did not have a chance to get him. In a league like this, especially, he went at the 1.5. I'm totally okay with that. If you want to take him at the 1.1, I'm also okay with that. I probably wouldn't, but I think, if all these players play 17 games, if you tell me McCaffrey is the best player in fantasy, not surprised at all. So it's all a health thing. It's all risk, management. And especially in a league like this where, it's like, hey man, you kind of got to just go for it all. McCaffrey going at the 1.5 is almost honestly too late in my opinion. I'd probably take him over Jefferson. I'd probably go Chase, Bijan Robinson, and then it's a conversation with Gibbs, McCaffrey, and Barkley, in my opinion. But moving on, after Tyreek Hill, Alvin Kamara, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, James Conner, Tedero McMillan, Joe Burrow, Breece Hall, not Bryce Hall, not the TikToker, Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, go at the 4-5 turn. Then in the fifth round, after Montgomery, we got Pacheco, Devontae Adams, Cortland Sutton, Jamison Williams, RJ Harvey, Tony Pollard, George Pickens, Devontae Smith, and then Xavier Worthy, and I am on the clock. So as the fifth round was going, I was hoping that I wasn't tempted to take Devontae Adams at that value because I already have his teammate Puka Nacua. Cortland Sutton, Jamison Williams, George Pickens, and Xavier Worthy were really on my short list of players I wanted to fall to me with that upside in this league where upside is very important. None of them made it back to me. I was considering, Pollard and Harvey as solid running backs, but, I already had those Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker players in my running back room. So I ended up going with DJ Moore at wide receiver. I think he's a little bit underrated, although I do get why people don't want him with his inconsistencies and with the crowded receiver room for the Bears. But I do think he is going to be the number one for Chicago, and he has big playability. So it's going to depend on Caleb Williams taking a step up and, DJ Moore actually being the wide receiver one there. They brought in Luther Burden, Colson Loveland at tight end as rookies. Rome Odunze is going in his second year, and Caleb Williams did not show that he can support all those targets last year, but if he can, that's a guy who has a lot of upside here in the fifth round. His teammate DeAndre Swift, who is also a thought to draft there, went next. Jalen Waddle goes at the 6-1. He was also someone I was considering, and then I'm on the clock again, and I end up going with Aaron Jones, running back of the Minnesota Vikings. If you just look at who's next at receiver, Rome Odunze, I'm not going to take another bear there. Mahomes and Laporta went off the board. I don't really like that value in the sixth round. Calvin Ridley, Igbuka, Travis Hunter, I'm cool with those picks, but Zay Flowers I think is going to be a little bit frustrating to roster. But I was torn between a few running backs here, especially with having gone receiver with my last pick. I'm not really big on Aaron Jones this season, just because I think Jordan Mason is going to have a role. He's going to be used on the goal line, and there are questions with JJ McCarthy. I think the Vikings offense will be good. Not trying to be biased here. I was worried just as much as everyone with Sam Darnold last year, but I think Kevin O'Connell proved, the head coach there, that, this offense, as long as the quarterback has a pulse, the offense is probably going to have a chance at least of being good. And JJ McCarthy was drafted in the first round a couple years ago, missed his rookie year. So this is basically his rookie year, but he's obviously a talented player. And I think he's going to be able to do enough to keep this offense moving. So again, I don't normally take Aaron Jones here, but one thing I really did in this draft was to think of like, okay, what if I'm wrong about some of these things? I'm going to, miss a lot of these calls that I'm making on some of these players. So I thought, what if the offense is really good? What if Aaron Jones is just the guy and Jordan Mason, it doesn't have as big of a role as we think? Out of these other running backs here, I mean, Caleb Johnson was tempting, the rookie in Pittsburgh, but I ended up going with Aaron Jones. And I'm not ecstatic about the pick, but as my running back 3 in the 6th round, I'm totally cool with that. So after that, I went Mahomes, Laporta, Odunze, Flowers, Calvin Ridley, Igbuka, Caleb Johnson, TJ Hawkinson, Tyler Warren, Travis Hunter, and Mark Andrews. Hunter and Andrews go at the 6-7 turn. So 3 tight ends go off the board. I was kind of holding out hope that maybe a tight end would come to me if I wanted to take it with my 7th or 8th round pick. But after Andrews, I went Ricky Pearsall, who I was maybe hoping would get back to me, Quinshawn Judkins, Cam Scadaboo, Jalen Warren, Jerry Jeudy, who I was kind of thinking about taking. I was also kind of maybe considering Jalen Warren, although I think he's more of a safe floor guy. It's going to be a split backfield. Probably not a ton of upside here. Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Rashee Rice with his, 6-game suspension? Whatever suspension is, 4, 5, 6-game suspension. Bo Nix at quarterback. Travis Kelce at tight end, and then I'm on the clock again, and I take another guy that I have not taken in any drafts. I never thought I would. I went with Matthew Golden, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, my first rookie on my team. Not my favorite rookie in fantasy drafts, and didn't really have the college production that I like. It's interesting, he didn't really put up numbers for statistically in college that you would hope for out of a first-round pick, but he has an opportunity for the Packers, and it's the unknown factor of what if he is a first-round caliber receiver and he is the number 1 for Jordan Love that he's been looking for a while here. So, compared to a guy like Olave or Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs, some of those older veterans that might have a safer floor, I'm going upside. Like, if this was a regular league, I probably would have gone Stephon Diggs there. But again, I'm playing to win here. So, I think Diggs is a great value in the 8th round. I'd rather have Diggs over Kupp or Olave, who went a pick or 3, respectively, before Diggs. But after Golden, it went ETN and then Olave, and then I'm on the clock again, and I go Austin Eckler in the 8th round. Great value. The Commanders traded away Brian Robinson Jr. Everyone's, all excited about, like, Bill Krosky Merritt and even, Rodriguez. Eric Rodriguez, is that his name? Chris Rodriguez. I'm forgetting his name. Chris Rodriguez. But, Eckler was pretty good last year in a limited role. He's a pass catcher, and I think he's going to be the most valuable member of this backfield. He's not the player he once was, but in the 8th round, I love it there. I got him in a trade in Dynasty where he was kind of a throw-in. I actually was targeting Brian Robinson Jr. This was months ago when he was on the team. But now that Brian Robinson Jr. is gone, he's my handcuff to McCaffrey, and I also have Garendo, so I kind of have that whole backfield locked up. And then Austin Eckler, I think I just got at least a flex player out of Robinson getting shipped off. So especially in, PPR and half PPR leagues, he really is valuable to me. And this is a half PPR league, by the way, and you get 0.1 per rush, I believe was the scoring format. So after that, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyrone Tracy, Jordan Mason. I like that value for Mason in the 8th. I know I took Aaron Jones here, but I do honestly think that Jordan Mason will have a role and will be the goal line back. And Aaron Jones is never really the most healthy. So Jordan Mason in the 8th is a great value. Zach Charbonnet, if he has a role for the Seahawks or if Ken Walker goes down, that's a great pick there. Brian Robinson Jr., the backup for McCaffrey, I guess in the 8th round is a little early to me, but you know what? That is the guy that took McCaffrey, so he is insuring himself here. Javonte Williams, Josh Downs, Deebo Samuel, and then Jacoby Myers. And then in the 9th round, we got J.K. Dobbins, Brock Purdy, Jawan Jennings, Michael Pittman, David Njoku, who I was kind of hoping would get back to me. Jordan Addison was another guy who I was, kind of hoping for, getting back to me. He's going to be suspended for a few games, but in this league, it's all about getting primed in the playoffs. And in the 9th round, I'm willing to roster a guy who's not going to play for a few games if I'm able to get Addison and what he can do, a few games into the season. Evan Ingram and Tucker Kraft go next. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm basically punting tight end. That's kind of a tier break for me where, if I'm not getting Njoku, Ingram, or Kraft there, I can wait. I'm not going to reach on like Kyle Pitts, who went pretty soon after there, but Tank Bigsby, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, I went with my 9th round pick, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. His teammate Khalil Shakir went 1 pick before. And again, in a league like this, I just don't really understand that. Where upside is the name of the game. Granted, that team's receivers aren't really as strong as mine. He went with Neighbors, but then he went running back, took Xavier Worthy, then went onesie positions, quarterback, tight end, and then Cooper Kupp. So Neighbors, Worthy, and Cooper Kupp. If you want a little stability with Khalil Shakir, I guess I do get that, but I have a pretty solid receiver room where I'm fine betting on the second year level up out of Keon Coleman. I wasn't super inspired by his rookie year, and I'm prepared, to be disappointed, but he's got the physical makeup of a good receiver. He's got the draft capital, good offense with Josh Allen, and the reports out of camp have been good. So Bill Ja'Cory Krosky, what's even his real name? Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. People call him Bill. Goes next. I believe he was listed as the running back 4 on the depth chart, so we'll see if that's all like smoke and mirrors or if he's actually just not going to be involved at all. And then the next round starts. Kyle Pitts goes off the board at tight end. And then, in my opinion, this is arguably the greatest value in the draft. Dak Prescott, I get in the 10th round. Love that value. Brock Purdy went in the 9th, Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix in the 7th, Patrick Mahomes in the 6th. Even Joe Burrow in the 4th. I know he's better in a vacuum, but that's a 6-round difference there. Like, give me Dak Prescott in the 10th all day. He was my quarterback, my guy. Their defense is going to be bad, especially after the Micah Parsons trade. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. He already had CeeDee Lamb, and he added George Pickens in the offseason as well to the wide receiver room. So that's the best wide receiver 2 he's had in a while. So it's a little bit of a tough start to begin the year, in my opinion, but I think by the end of the season, he's going to be the best quarterback value in all of fantasy and a potential league winner just based on him going in the 10th round and being a locked-in quarterback 1. Next up, Nick Chubb, who is probably going to be the starter for the Texans, goes next. Jaden Reed in the 10th round. I got Matthew Golden in the 7th, but Jaden Reed in the 10th. I mean, Jaden Reed was very frustrating. I had him in multiple leagues, but that's at that point in the 10th round, I'm willing to take a risk on, maybe he gets a little more consistent this year. Granted, they did bring in a 1st-round receiver, so we'll see how that plays out. I'm not confident that he'll be a consistent guy, but in the 10th round, I'm willing to take that shot, especially because he has that upside that is going to be very important in this league. Jerome Ford, who might be the starter for the Browns here. It's him and Sampson, and we'll see what happens with the rookie Judkins, who went in the 7th round, but Ford could very well be a steal in the 10th. Joe Mixon in the 10th. We don't even know if he's going to play this year. He's on IR. If he comes back, that's going to be someone that he's glad he held on to and, put on injured reserve, but it's bad vibes. Jaden Higgins, Keenan Allen, who got signed with the Chargers. I like that pick in the 10th round out of Keenan Allen. That's that could be a more valuable pick than you would think, and I think that's a good spot to take him. Ollie Gordon, Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and then Kyler Murray rounds out the 10th round. To start the 11th round, Colston Loveland goes off the board. And this was a little weird to me. I mean, you already have Mark Andrews and you're taking Colston Loveland. Like, I do understand like the concept of taking a backup tight end when your first tight end isn't super locked in, and he went with the rookie to kind of play the upside there. But he also took Kyler Murray the pick before when he already had Josh Allen, and there's only 5 bench spots in this league. So to do that with both positions, the tight end one I get a little bit more, but to do that when you already have Josh Allen, and I get the idea too, like Kyler Murray has upside if he can run the ball better than he did last year, but like, you're going to use him as trade bait, but how often does that actually work? Next up, though, Darnell Mooney, Trey Benson, Braylon Allen, nice little handcuff committee backs there. Chris Godwin, he's going to miss at least the first handful of games. I think I heard like at least week 5. But again, if he comes back and is able to stay healthy and Igbuka doesn't take his job, that might be a good pick here in the 11th. Jared Goff in the 11th. I'm not a big Goff guy, but I guess I'm okay with that in the 11th round here. Rashid Shaheed, but then Drake May goes next in the 11th round here. I'd rather have Drake May than Jared Goff for sure. Yeah, I think he's got more upside. He runs the ball. And Jared Goff is going to give you ups and downs with just sometimes they're going to run the ball every time they score, and he doesn't run. So himself, his running backs are going to run into the end zone, but he is not. Dylan Sampson, the rookie for Cleveland, might have a role there. Goes next. Adam Thielen back with the Vikings. Skull baby. Then I'm on the clock. I need a tight end here, and I go with Jake Ferguson. To me, that's the end of a tier, and I really wanted to get him once Colson Loveland was off the board because I have Dak Prescott. So if Dak Prescott does have the year that I'm hoping, that means he probably threw a fair amount of touchdowns, and Jake Ferguson is a nice red zone target there. Last year was kind of a forgotten year for him, but 2 years ago he was really good for fantasy, so I'm hoping we can get back to that Jake Ferguson. And then Justin Herbert goes next, and then Marvin Mims goes off the board. I was kind of hoping Mims would fall to me, but I really wanted to secure Jake Ferguson with that stack with Dak Prescott, and even though the team after me, who had 2 picks before I drafted again, they already had Kyle Pitts. That's the type of tight end where it's like, Kyle Pitts is not a locked-in starter. Maybe they do double up on tight end and take Jake Ferguson. We saw the team with Mark Andrews take a second tight end, and the team that had George Kittle, that's also the team that drafted Evan Ingram for some reason. So, I forgot to mention that in the moment, but Njoku, Ingram, and Kraft went off the board shortly before I was going to pick. The team that took Ingram already had Kittle. Like, if he didn't take Ingram there, I probably would have taken him. So that was kind of annoying, but I took a risk and loss with Marvin Mims, but I ended up taking Cedric Tillman, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns. I'm very happy with that pick in the 12th round. I think he's a very, very good late round pick with Joe Flacco starting. That could be a higher powered offense than we think. And Jerry Jeudy is the guy you want there probably, and Njoku at tight end. But Tillman has a chance to be the wide receiver too there, and he flashed last year when given a chance with Jameis Winston. Then he missed the end of the year with injury, and I believe it was a concussion. He just never came back from it, but he got a little bit forgotten. Rashad Bateman in the 12th round. He's going to be inconsistent, but he might be a guy that you throw in with injuries and bye weeks and gets in the end zone, puts up a decent performance. Woody Marks goes off next. Nice little gamble in the 12th round. If Nick Chubb isn't the guy in the backfield for the Texans, maybe Woody Marks takes over. Could be Dameon Pierce. It's kind of a gross situation, but Broncos D, CJ Stroud. Pardon me. I just got excited about CJ Stroud in the 12th, apparently. He was going way too early last year, guys. What a 180 this has done. Wow. Eagles defense, Jaden Blue, Bashal Tutin, Luther Burden, Justin Fields. Great value in the 12th round because he can run. Christian Kirk. And then in the 13th round, we got Commanders defense, Steelers, Vikings defense, Brandon Ayuk, JJ McCarthy. Jordan Love in the 13th round is a great value. The team that took Jared Goff also took Jordan Love. I'm very cool with that. Neither of those guys they profile as, high upside guys, but if you play him in the right matchup, if Jordan Love has touchdown regression where he throws a few more this year, that's going to be a solid pick. And then JJ McCarthy, the pick before that, he goes on the road in Chicago week 1, and that team already has Lamar Jackson. So I'm guessing they're going to cut JJ McCarthy after the first week, but I do like that pick season long as the schedule opens up. There are some matchups there. I think he plays Cincinnati early in the season, so that might be a spot where maybe he's streamable. But 49ers, the rookie Cam Ward at quarterback goes next. Dalton Kincaid. Cardinals defense, who I was kind of hoping would fall to me, goes right before me because they get the Saints in week 1 and Spencer Rattler. So I had a few running backs on my short list, Shipley for the Eagles, Rachaad White for the Bucks, just as handcuffs. But I ended up going with Chig Okonkwo at tight end just because I didn't take a tight end until the 11th round. So I was kind of taking Chig here that, maybe he ends up being my starting tight end because this guy has upside. He has the physical traits to make him a high upside tight end. If Cam Ward, the rookie, comes in and is an improvement over, what they've had there recently, which is not going to be hard to do. There's a real chance that Chig Okonkwo is actually like a very good steal here. Calvin Ridley is the wide receiver one there. They brought in Tyler Lockett, Alec Ayamayanor. Is that how you pronounce that? Ayamanor. I believe it just came out. He's going to be their wide receiver too. I love that as a late pick in the draft, but wouldn't shock me if Chig Okonkwo is a guy who, with his physical makeup, with the lack of proven wide receivers there, with Tyler Lockett being older, if Cam Ward comes in and he's better than Will Levis was, which is not going to be hard. Like the reason I am excited about this pick is because, to have a chance to have upside as a tight end, you really need to have physical explosiveness, and to be pretty high in the target pecking order. Like that really increases your odds. And here in the 13th round, I opted to go with that instead of a handcuff running back. Also because come week one, we'll know probably like what his role is. Is he like the number 2 target in the offense? Is Cam Ward gonna be, focused on getting him the ball, or is he kind of an afterthought? They also drafted a rookie tight end, Gunnar Helm. Like, what is the usage going to be? So if it comes out week one, he's not involved at all, I will easily just cut him. I'm going to start Jake Ferguson week one, most likely here. Granted, they are playing the Eagles. That's a tough matchup, but, we'll see. And that's enough time spent talking about a 13th round pick. Ravens defense goes next. They're playing the Bills week one, so I'm not a huge fan of that. Dallas Goedert goes with the first pick of the next round. And then I take Tajay Spears, backup running back for the Titans. He's on injured reserve, so we'll get into that in a second here. But Lions, Seahawks, Hunter Henry, Trey Harris, Tesla, the rookie phenom, 3rd round pick for the Lions goes next. Kareem Hunt, Bucks D, Ayamanor, who I just talked about for the Titans. He has the opportunity to be the number 2 receiver there. Tyler Algier, and then Rashad White go next. All right, so back to what I was saying about my last pick. I took Tajay Spears. He's the backup for the Tennessee Titans with Tony Pollard as the starter. It was projected to be a bit of a split, but Spears is on injured reserve, and we do have 2 IR spots here. So I took Spears with my last pick, put him on injured reserve. I added Jalen Coker, wide receiver for the Panthers, who's also on IR, put him on injured reserve, and then I picked up the New York Jets defense, who play the Pittsburgh Steelers in week one. That was my favorite of the remaining defenses, and I will just stream the position throughout the season. But this is the final team here. Dak Prescott at quarterback in the 10th round. I love that value. We'll see how he fares week one in the season opener against the Eagles. But season long, I really like Dak Prescott. Running back, we got Chase Brown of the Bengals, Kenneth Walker of the Seahawks, Aaron Jones of my Minnesota Vikings, and then Austin Eckler of the Washington Commanders. Next up at wide receiver, we got Puka Nacua of the Rams, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears, and then I took some upside guys for my bench with Matthew Golden of the Packers, the rookie, Keon Coleman, the second-year player at receiver for the Bills, and then Cedric Tillman, young receiver for the Cleveland Browns, who has the chance to have a role there. And then at tight end, I waited late. I took Jake Ferguson for the stack with Dak, and then I took Chig Okonkwo in the second to last round just to see what his role is in week one. And then we got the Jets DST to finish out the lineup here. So, Eckler on the bench, he's someone who I almost want to get in my lineup. But I think I would play Aaron Jones and DJ Moore over Eckler. But in some leagues, some deeper leagues, there are some potential for Eckler to start. I think the Giants defense is going to be tough, and the Bears defense on the road. The Vikings could struggle with, JJ McCarthy, it being his first game and everything on Monday Night Football. But this is the lineup right now, and honestly, it's a pretty solid team. If this was like my regular home league, I would probably be a little scared of some of the risk I took here, but in a league like this where I really am trying to win the whole thing with a ton of competition and you have to really outperform everyone, I really like this type of team. I reached on Chase Brown a little bit, but I just think he could really surprise. I think he has a safe floor and a ton of upside. Kenneth Walker could be, a very, very good value in the 3rd round if he's able to stay healthy, and if Charbonnet doesn't take too much work from him, which I don't think he will, but it could be more of a split than we want. Puka Nacua is going to have to stay healthy, and Stafford at quarterback, but he's as good as any receiver for fantasy in the league when everything's working right. Tyreek Hill, again, we've seen him be the wide receiver 1 before. We just needing to turn back the clock a little bit here, and for the Dolphins to actually throw the ball down the field more than not at all like they did last year. Hopefully Jonnu Smith leaving at tight end will help them do that, and then DJ Moore and Aaron Jones in the flex. Again, not in love with it, but that could work out. So for this type of league, I'm pretty happy with this draft. Comment down below what you think. Let me know if you are in the Megalabowl yourself and what your team is looking like. And thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you enjoy the pod so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy. See you in the next one. Peace.